So creative strategy in 2025 is going to be more about the math of creative strategy than about the creatives themselves. And nothing could explain this better than one metric that I'm going to discuss here. And this metric is going to be all about creative volume. So 2024 was all about creative diversity. It still will be important, but if there's going to be anything more important in 2025 and perhaps thereafter, it's going to be creative volume. And this is because of the changes in the algorithm, but also because of the AI revolution that's happening. So the AI revolution is only going to help you when it comes to tackling creative volume. But I'm going to come to that later. Let's just look at what I'm really talking about here. So I'll just go through these things here. So the first metric that I want to introduce is hit. And hit is nothing but success. How much success you're getting essentially out of the efforts that you're putting in. So the hit ads will be the ones which perform significantly better than the rest in terms of CPA, but also in terms of the share of conversions. So the bulk of conversions, the lion's share of conversions should be coming from these ads, and they should also have a significantly better CPA. The reason why I've used CPA here, it could have been something like ROAS also, is because you may have varying AOVs, and therefore the ROAS can also vary. But the CPA is a very good indicator of how well the ad is actually doing, irrespective of the AOV of the products that are converting. Now, there can be a number of ways to define it, and you would probably want to use a combination of these. So this is a good combination, these three. So for instance, certain number of days, a certain number of conversions in a certain period, in 30 days. The period should be 30 days, I think. Then at least X times the spend of target CPA in the account. So you can take a certain target. You can start with the account average CPA, but you will have to have a target CPA in mind. That's obviously can be something that can be back calculated from your target ROAS. And then you will also have the CPA from the hits, which must be less than equal to the target CPA. Now, a lot of people will have numbers for these. The reason why I've really kept X is because it's very difficult to actually pinpoint the exact number of conversions that you should have to define a hit, or the number of times it should be spending in, that of the target CPA. This varies from account to account, from brand to brand. So you'll have to decide what is the sweet spot for you. And then comes another important metric, and this is the hit ratio. The hit ratio, or some people might call it the hit index, is the number of conversions from the hit ads by the total number of conversions. So what is this really telling you? This is telling you what fraction of your conversions are actually coming from the hits as opposed to the total number of conversions in the account. And why is this important? Now, this actually varies between 0 to 1. Now, if the hit ratio is too low, if it is near about 0, then either you're not spending enough, right? Or your creative sucks, right? It's just not working. You're not getting enough hits because of that, or you're not experimenting enough. And that's why only a few creatives, you're not getting enough hits at all. Or you have a bigger problem at hand, which is a product market fit issue. So you have to go back to your drawing board and rethink the product and add features there or improve it or whatever. So that's of course a bigger problem and goes out of the normal scape and normal routine of performance marketing. But if that's okay, then you will have to look at these things. You have to experiment more. You have to think, rethink your creative approach. On the other hand, if it is too high, if it is very close to one, say, above 9.9, then it's probable again that you're not experimenting enough, because then it means that only a few hits are, having a lion's share of the conversions. Once again, this is supposed to be the case. That's why they're defined as hits. But at the same time, it should not be so absolutely predominantly happening that nothing else is the account is literally working. Then it means that you're so dependent on those that in case they fail, everything is going to go haywire. So you can't allow that to happen. You need to have winners coming in consistently, or at least at a steady pace, and therefore you have to experiment enough, and you have to follow the principles of heavy testing and all for that. And then it also means that it's a huge risk to stay this way, right? Because we are seeing continuously, from practical use cases, from real examples, that winners are not staying winners for very long. So winner is not something that's a lifelong thing, right? It has a longevity. It has it has a shelf life. It's going to eventually become a loser, right? So don't depend on just a few winners. Now it brings us to hit rate finally. So the hit rate is nothing but the number of hit ads by the total number of ads launched. So that's simply the hit rate. So how much hits, how much success you're able to produce. But as important as it is, this metric is actually linked to two more metrics. And let's actually look at those two. So this is, first of all, cost per creative. And the cost per creative is the total cost of creative by the total number of creatives produced. So how much, and this of course can be in terms of a certain period, right? So for instance, you're looking at this metric in over a month. So the total cost that you have, that you have, the total money that you have spent, the total cost that has gone behind creative production, divided by the total number of creatives that have been produced in the period. That is your cost per creative. And I'm just going to come to a moment why this is so important. And then you have cost per hit, which is cost per creative by hit rate. So this is basically a composite metric. And this is probably the most important metric that I was talking about. This is that one metric, probably that will just, and if you can work on it, if you understand it, and you know how to optimize for it, then you are probably a creative strategist. You don't have to be a very creative thinker. It's all going to be about the math from this point on. So the cost per creative is a composite metric of the cost per hit is a composite metric of the cost per creative and the hit rate, right? You can do the simple math actually, just given the two definitions. You can figure out this is how it works. Now let's come to this slide here. So cost per creative is your hero metric, like I said in the first slide. So I hinted to it, and you can see that AI will actually help lower it for you, the cost per creative, and by extension the cost per hit. So cost per hit depends, as you can see, on two things, right? The cost per creative, which is the creative production thing, which is outside of what's happening in the ad account, and then you have the hit rate, which is also kind of outside of what the ad account is saying, but you get an idea from the from the feedback from the system. So the hit rate is informed by the processes. Um, Cost per creative also is, but cost per creative depends on your decision of how you're going to make those creatives, whether you're going to use in-house team, whether you're going to outsource it to a third-party agency, creative agency, specialists, very high, big names. So there can be so many ways of doing it. So you can go for really famous creative agencies, people who specialize in that creative production. The thing is, 2025 onwards, this change is happening so fast. AI is revolutionizing things. Like I hinted at the start of the video, like you might have also come across this ideas, like ugly ads and lo-fi production. So many things are being discussed around these areas, and it's super, super crucial now to understand that very, very sophisticated ways and complicated ways of production, which cost a lot of money, they are not necessarily going to give you better results. A lot of brands are still stuck at that stage. I'm really concerned about those brands, and I think that they should be looking at this information and rethinking the strategy of creative production. AI tools are completely revolutionizing the way we think about creative production. You can just give a few prompts to these AI tools, and then they're going to create amazing videos. I'm just amazed at by the kind of creatives that are getting produced, kind of UGC videos, stuff that you could not have imagined also, right? You don't just need video editors and so many people in the creative production team when you make UGC videos, but you also have to reach out to the influencers, right? AI is actually helping create UGC videos, and they are juxtaposing the product within that. I mean, it's like the influencers are holding the product, they're showcasing the product, but they're all AI. They're not real human beings. So that's the level of advancement that AI has been able to reach, and you should be tapping into that. So that's what really is all about. This discussion was meant to draw your attention to this point, and the role of the creative strategist, like I say, going forward, is to constantly figure out ways of lowering cost for creative. And this is what I, really, this I'll go with the point I'm trying to make is that algorithm is going to figure out the hits. You don't really have to figure out how to lower the hit rate. Okay, now you can try to, or rather increase the hit rate. If you try to increase the hit rate, you might think along those lines that you have always thought about, right? Like producing better creatives, dig more into the creative research. The problem is that it's becoming a game of volume now. So spending more time manually trying to figure out what creative will work is actually not going to work. Okay, that's not a win-win strategy at all. That's going to fail. You have to focus on producing more creatives. It has to be a creative output game now. And therefore, you have to reduce cost per creative. And that is therefore a thing all about finding ways, cheaper ways to produce creatives at scale. So it's a game of scalability now. So the cost per creative reduction is the ultimate name of the game. So I'll just give you a small example to conclude this video. It's a very simple walkthrough of this thing, and it's something that agencies should focus on now, and or rather, even brands should rethink their strategies. If they are with agencies who are costing them a fortune just for making creatives, then they should go back to the numbers, the numbers and the spreadsheets and PNLs and actually see if it's making sense, right? So let's imagine a couple of brands for which both of for which the contribution dollars for both is 50, okay? Meaning that this is like the contribution of the profit, and then brand A and brand B. So we are looking at creative costs. So let's assume both of them for a month, for a period of 1 month, are spending $10,000 behind creatives. And suppose the number of creatives brand A is producing 20 and brand B is producing 200. So brand B is producing 10 times as much. Okay, so from the discussion that we just had, this should lead us to the conclusion that brand B should be doing better ideally. Let's see. Now, the hit rate, in fact, we are giving brand A that advantage that, okay, it's producing lesser number of creatives, but it's doing so at a higher hit rate. Brand B has a lesser hit rate, but it's producing more creatives. Now, the cost per creative is obviously simply the total cost by creatives, right? Total number of creatives. So the cost per creative is much lower, as you can see, 10 times as lower, right? Because for the same cost, it's producing 10 times as much. So obviously, it has, 1/10 the cost per creative. And the cost per hit, we know that it's cost per creative by hit rate. And you can see that it's much higher for brand A, which is a disadvantage because it now has to actually get sales of 30, get sales worth of 34 sales, right? In order to pay back for the cost of production for the hit ads, if you understand what I mean. So this is basically the total cost, but divided by the cost per hit, rather, divided by the contribution dollars. So that's the profit that you're getting from each transaction. So basically, you have to have 34 sales. Brand A has to have 34 sales before it's going to be able to pay back for the hit ads that it has produced. So it has a bigger sort of a territory to cover before it can get into the profitable zone by applying the hit ads. And so this is a very important period because this defines how much longer you can stay in this game and how much you can scale, not just stay, but rather scale, because you need the money, right? You need the cash flow. On the other hand, brand B only needs 10 sales in order to pay back. So the payback period is shorter. Period as in, yeah, I'm defining it in the sense of number of sales. So this is a huge difference. It's a difference of course 24 sales here, right? For the contribution dollars that brand B has an advantage of, right? It's going to be ahead in the game because it's going to be able to keep producing more creatives. So it's a cumulative process, as you can see. You start with a lower cost per creative process. You can keep creating more creatives. And of course, if you have a decent hit rate, now of course, if this were to be terrible, the situation might change, right? So there you go. So if I reduce the hit rate to 2%, this then actually has a higher brand B actually has a higher number of ads needed to hit the payback, right? So that doesn't work. So you need to have a decent hit rate. So it has to be a combination of these two. I'm not saying that the cost per creative is the only thing that matters. The hit rate also matters, but you need to focus really on this one. So if you start with a decent hit rate and then you see that the cost per creative can be controlled, that's where the real competitive advantage is going to come. So I hope this makes sense. The creative strategist in the future will actually have to do this very thing. And it's going to be much more about understanding and optimizing for these numbers rather than about very complicated and very strategic sort of creative thinking. I'm sure creative thinking is important. I'm not belittling that at all. But I'm saying that numbers in the creative strategy game are becoming more important than the critics themselves because it's so algorithm driven. It's so automated right now. So hope that makes sense. If you have any contrarian theories, I'm sure there can be so many questions, so many challenges to this idea. But I'm open to discussion. I'm open to the debate. let's dive right in. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next video. Thank you.